We'll get things going, respect everyone's time. Thank you for joining us for another edition of CCIM Gulf Coast Houston Chapter webinar series. My name is Matt Moak with High Street Net Lease Group, and I'm the president of the Houston Gulf Coast CCIM Chapter for 2020. We're fortunate to have two great speakers with us today in Elena Bakina and Lori Alford to give us a crash course on seniors housing, which has been a hot topic the last 6 months. So it should be really interesting. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's taken the time to donate to our fellow CCIMers in Louisiana and the Louisiana chapter that were hit so hard by Hurricane Laura. So thanks to everyone who's participated in that effort. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick introduction of Elena and Lori and turn things over to them. So we've got Elena Bakina, who's a PhD and a CCIM and a vice president with Colliers International and a member of Colliers Healthcare and Seniors Housing Advisory Teams. She has over 15 years of experience assisting physicians, multi-specialty groups, hospitals, developers, seniors housing operators and owners, and private investors with acquisitions and dispositions, asset evaluations, and site selections within Texas. She's actively involved with the American College of Healthcare Executives, Medical Group Management Association, Argentum National Investment Center, and other organizations that help her to stay updated with the needs of these industries and to better serve her clients. And we also have Lori Alford, who's co-founder and chief operating officer of Avanti Senior Living. Lori is known as one of the industry's leading and most respected innovators of development, design, and programming. For 20 years, she's been passionate about providing older adults with sophisticated living, state-of-the-art architectural and interior design, and wellness that surpass the highest benchmark. Lori is actively involved in numerous industry advisory roles and boards, including chair of Urban Land Institute's Senior Housing Council, National Investment Committee, American Senior Housing Association, Aging 2.0, Senior Living Innovation Forum, and Environments for Aging Design. So Lori and Elena, thank you so much. And I'm going to slink off in the background here. Guys, if you have questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat feature and I'll keep my eye on that and we can address those either throughout or at the end of the presentation as time allows. So Elena and Lori, thank you so much, guys. It's all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak. So just would like to give an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. As Matt mentioned, this industry has been a hot topic and drew a lot of interest from the real estate community. However, there is not enough of easily available information or data on this industry. So today we would like to provide an overview of industry fundamentals and then talk about effect of the COVID-19 pandemic had on this industry and discuss current trends in Texas specifically. So we'll pull some of the slides and we are going to begin. Lori will join me right as we speak, as we go. So yep. Let's see. Oh, no, this is not what I want. Just a second. Okay, so I'd like to begin with an overview of the type of the communities that today are considered under seniors housing and care industry. Traditionally, we had independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities, but over several years, active adult and continuing care retirement community becoming an essential part of this industry. So I position them in the format starting from active adult with minimum services and care, with actually no services and care, to growing from independent living and more care and assisted living and etc. So continuing care retirement communities have combination of all, practically independent, assisted, and skilled nursing. Active adult, this is an interesting topic. I've seen over the past years that there is growing interest in that sector, and active adult, provides minimum services, is virtually, even less than independent living. So, Lori, have you seen, in your sort, have you seen the more interest? Is your group interested in adding active adult to your portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure many people know that the baby boomers are aging. In our industry, we call it the silver hair tsunami that's coming. And truth be told, the active adult segment is definitely the one that the boomers are starting to hit. And so it's definitely having an uptick in the development for that. But another thing to note out of these types of communities are the assisted living, memory care, skilled, and CCRC, because the CCRC has a blend of the independent, AL, and skilled. Those kind of three segments, they all are licensed, unlike active adult and independent living. And so there's definitely life safety features that have to be met, as well as they have a regulatory component. Assisted living and memory care are regulated by the states, and every state is different, whereas skilled is regulated by the federal government. So there's kind of one set of rules for that segment of the industry.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, and I'm sure all participants on the call know that Texas and non-COA state doesn't require certificate of occupancy. So that makes a big difference in the way we look, in positioning the properties and communities. But assistant living, independent living, I've seen a lot of interest in that type of communities lately, like you mentioned. But again, what puzzles me that we see a lot of development in the independent living, but at the same time, adults are, older people are moving into the community in a later time of their, in their life. We've seen before, like 75 plus, but now we are looking more to 80 plus and even higher, even older. So what is your opinion on that, Lori?
Yeah, it's definitely true. So our portfolio primarily specializes in the assisted living and memory care. So I have great data for that segment, but it's applicable to all of them. About 20 years ago, the average age of our residents was about 82 to 83 female. And now our average age runs between 87 and 89. And years ago, they were coming in maybe needing one type of care, because in assisted living, you typically are requiring medication, help taking a shower, help getting to and from the dining room, maybe help transferring from one seat to another. And they were coming in maybe needing one type of care. Now they are needing probably about 2 to 3. So they're definitely choosing to stay in their home for much longer. And I think a lot of technology has helped with that, to be able to age in place in their own home environment. And so that's why we're seeing folks wait a lot longer. And with that correlates over into that average length of stay. It used to be, you could have an assisted living resident anywhere for 3 to 4 years. And now the average age is about 18 months that their length of stay stays with us. So in active adult and independent, where that correlates over is a little bit of the same thing. The independent living folks used to be in their early 70s moving in. Well, now that's almost a new retirement age. And so folks are still working, and they're not necessarily choosing to move into an IL just yet. They're seeing that more so into their late 70s, mid to late 70s. And then active adult is typically just happens whenever they choose to downsize on their own.
Yes, absolutely. I've also noticed trends. I'd like to talk about the new trends. What within that, the types of the communities, mostly like if you talk about independent living, even active adult, assistant living, there are going to, we have wide variety of the communities that serve to different social groups. Today, like even Houston, we are in Houston, there are new communities coming that are gonna serve to Asian, communities in Chinatown, right? And so there are more of the communities that serve to specific religious groups, right? So the industry is evolving and changing as we go. So that's what makes it so exciting. It's always, looking for new ways to serve the people, the older generations, and new ways to accommodate various demands, right, from different social groups. So let's move to next topic at this point, about ownership types. So traditionally, and there's a, real estate is owned very often on a net lease basis, the same in the senior housing and care communities. So net leased net lease ownerships are taking place, but there are two additional types of ownerships that we are seeing here that makes it very unique, this industry. So when operators own the real estate and at the same time conduct the business on that real estate, so that's on operator-owned type of ownership. But there are some owners who prefer to pay management company a fee, so to participate deeper in the business aspect, in the business. So taking more risk with that. So definitely net lease properties, when you rent to the operator the real estate, there is no much risk associated for the owner. When the owner pays a fee to management company, there is a more risk associated with that. So, Lori, what is in your, you are an assistant living operator. What is your preferred type of ownership? I know you own some your properties. What is your
right? Yeah. So we're the developer and the operator on our communities, and compared to multifamily or hospitality, our business in senior housing is extraordinarily operational intensive. It's 7 days a week, rain, sleet, snow, or shine, and you're caring for people, not just for a couple of days like the hospitality folks. You're caring for folks, for as long as they live there. And you're not just providing a room for them to stay in and maybe delivering room service, you're providing medical care as well. And so I always find it's better to be somewhat aligned. If you're choosing to just be, to want to get into the asset class and own some of the development and real estate side of it, that's great. But those that have that have the operator have some skin in the game, so to speak, has that operator a little bit more aligned with the end game, because the management fee side is typically 5 to 7% of the revenue. And I've always seen it a little bit better when the management company puts a little bit of their money into it as well, because again, you create that alignment. But there's a lot of management companies that won't. And so we, with our equity partners, have a great alignment, because we also, we own part of it with them. Okay. And then we also operate it.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes. Well, we see, public REITs, preferred type of ownership are just, net leased properties, right? So, yes, operators often, like you're saying, like to own the real estate as well. Among the largest operators that own real estate. Definitely, we have a, nationally we have a Brookdale, and local in Texas, it's a Capital Senior Living, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're one of the largest operators that own their real estate. So
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about, we have information about later. We'll jump into discussing the trends. At that point, we talk about investment, and we can talk about more of the owners as well. So let us move on to next slide. And I would like to, Lori and I, to discuss about, type of payment that we are seeing
Mm-hmm.
in this industry. As you can
Yeah.
see on the screen, yeah, Lori, please.
Yeah. So in senior housing, in really the active IL, some AL, and some memory care is all private pay. There are certain communities in the assisted living and memory care that do get paid through Medicaid. Medicare, Medicaid covers your skilled, and some skilled is also private pay as well, but that's really, really expensive to go private. Other ways that folks can offset their rental is if you either have long-term care insurance. There's every policy is a little bit different, but that is one way that folks, offset burning through their savings to have a long-term care policy in place, and they can tap into that. Another way that can be done is through VA benefits, and primarily it was mainly men that served in the wars, and there's certain wars and war times that you have to have lived. There's certain criteria that you have to meet in order to get VA benefits. But the nice thing about the VA benefits is if the husband served during that time, the wife, and it's primarily in assisted living and memory care that it's mainly women. 80% of our residents are women. They get the benefit as well. And so that helps to subsidize some of the private funds as well. But as far as state paying, which is the Medicare and Medicaid, you primarily see that with the 90 days through skilled. And then you also see some assisted living and memory care offer Medicaid beds. They're not your nicer ones, but they definitely do have some, and it's all asset based. I think they do a 3 or 5 year look back, depends upon each state as well, but there is some income qualifications to receive those fundings.
Yes. Last year I attended Argentum's national conference, and there was a very important topic discussed on Medicare. So, and the concern has been expressed moving forward about funds and, being available to senior housing, to adults, the seniors. So the industry with the demographics that in the, coming up with baby boomers numbers increasing, definitely is going to continue to grow. But there are, the payments and affordability is a huge topic in the industry.
It is. One of the things as an operator, I always tell people that's a really tough subject. Wages and food, which is your two biggest line items on your P&L, you don't have an affordability way to get that. Wages are wages, and food cost is food costs. Electricity cost is electricity cost. So truly, in order for us to figure out a way to make this affordable for private pay funding, it's going to have to come from the development side to build buildings at a cheaper cost, but still be able to provide all of these service and amenities that society is now commanding that our residents want. And so maybe that means lower development fees. Maybe that means some really creative financing. I'm not sure, but from an operation perspective, it is what it is.
Yeah, so since we touched the topic about development, let's talk about that more. So here, here are the major development criteria that we want to talk about today. So the first one is the penetration rate. I just would like to kind of provide overview what the penetration rate is. National Investment Center calculated by dividing the total number of senior housing units in a given area by the number of households 75 and older. So it's practically a measure of market saturation, market demand. However, in today's demographic conditions, developers may want to calculate households for 80 and higher, and older. So like we previously discussed, right? So, but again, for a developer, typically lower penetration rates are considered favorable for entering in a new market. When higher penetration rates can be an indicator that units may become more difficult to fill or stay full. So there has been a wide variety of penetration rates across the different metropolitan areas in the US. NIC data that we usually use reports penetration rates for seniors housing in Texas for second quarter of this year to vary anywhere from 11.2% in San Antonio, that's the lowest we see, and 17.6 in Austin for seniors housing. So it's not including skilled nursing facilities, just for seniors housing. For seniors housing in the US, average penetration rates are today about 11%. So, and then, so there are other aspects we would like to talk about, like what developers are looking when they are entering the market. Well, Lori, you are a developer as well as a operator, right? So would you like to give us insights from your perspective? What is, talk about this?
Yeah, sure. So in our business, again, focusing on, yes, it's basic real estate investment, location super important, and you want to make sure everything pencils. But again, the number one most important thing when looking to develop a senior living project of any sort, whether it's active, IL, memory care, AL, anywhere on the spectrum, is that operational component and what's going on in that marketplace. And so that competitive landscape is really, really important. And I always say it's an art and it's a science to do the feasibility process. And part of that art is looking at, what is the competition doing in the market? What is their occupancy? What are their rental rates? Are they providing discounts? Because there's a lot of folks that say, that might be full, but you can have a full building that you've given away a lot of discounts and never turn a profit. And so occupancy isn't about everything. It's not the most important thing, because you also want to make sure they're capturing the rental rates. And then when you're going to do your pro forma, I see a lot of developers, they try to get very creative on their pro forma by saying, oh, well, it's a new product and I can increase the rental rate by $500 a unit or $1,000 a unit, or I can, perform with, be told it's unrealistic. And that's just creative penciling to get a deal to work. And so you really have to have a strong operator that can come in and help achieve that's realistic through the underwriting process, but also kind of understands what the market looks like on the competitive side. Drive time is another really important thing. Typically, our families come anywhere from 3 to 5 miles of the community. Obviously, in the metro market, if it's a kind of a secondary, tertiary market, it could, be a lot farther. But again, just having an understanding of how that market moves. Accessibility to, and really it's accessibility and access to the hospitals and clinics. The farther up the spectrum you go, meaning, from a assisted living to a memory care, they go to the hospital a lot more, right? They're older, they have more needs. That just makes sense. So having a piece of land next to a hospital, does that mean you're going to fill up any faster? No, but it does mean that you could be more attractive to that consumer. And so having that ability is really important, and it is a very good thing when looking at land. But to start it off is kind of the demographics. When we do our feasibility, we actually look for the adult daughter. because in assisted living and memory care, it's that female 45 to 65 years old that's making that decision for her mother or mother-in-law. And it is typically the woman that makes those decisions. And so we look for that age range. And then secondary, we look for the 75 plus, because as mom is aging, they'll move mom. In fact, just this week, I have someone on my team flying to Oregon to help a daughter move her mom down to Houston. And whereas on the IL side, it's very different. You want to go more towards that specific demographic that will be choosing to live in that development because they're making that choice. Their children don't make that choice for them. But once you get to AL, you want to really look at that adult daughter, which is 45 to 65. The economic and kind of sociographic portion of that market is really important. You know, you have to know what your product is, what your price point that you want your product to be, so you don't go into a market and overbuild, which causes you to have higher rates of which, you know, maybe the market wouldn't command that. So if you ever look at an Avanti product, we have a very specific type of building. They're more modern, they're a little edgier, they're more boutique hotel. And they fit really well in a more metropolitan market. If we ever took that building and put it in, let's say, like a Lake Jackson or a Victoria, something like that, or even in the Hill Country, it's probably not going to do well because it just doesn't fit that market. And so you have to know kind of what makes that, what really keeps that economy going there, who are the people like, and what is it that's going to kind of trip their trigger so that when they're coming through the doors, it's not off-putting by what you decided and how you decided to build your building. The labor market's really important. Having it's small things like just having a bus line. We actually missed that one time, and we have a market that it doesn't have a bus line, and it's actually very hard to recruit in that market. And, you know, again, something on the pro forma is wages do go up. And in this business, about 80% of them are hourly employees, but you can't pencil minimum wage. You need to pencil much higher, as well as recognizing that you have nurses and a lot of other things that, again, you really need to rely on your operator to help dictate what it is that you're going to perform into that labor market. Because that, again, labor is your most expensive line item on the entire P&L. And then, you know, just kind of the housing market. We tend to look for markets where there is housing development. Again, our building is edgy, it's newer, so we want to see some growth going into the market. That doesn't mean just because you don't have housing development being built that it's not a good market. That's just how we target it. But there are very established market. You want to have a lot of depth in the housing because, again, you're going after a certain very narrow demographic. And so you want to make sure there's enough rooftops in the market to kind of meet that supply and demand.
Well, fantastic. Yes, Lori, wanted to ask you, so you kind of jumped from penetration rate, you jumped in the competitive landscape. So are you looking into penetration rates? Because I've heard a lot of developers these days kind of go away from that, parameter, really looking more in driving time versus penetration rate. For your, when you evaluate, the new location, are you looking at the penetration rates?
Yeah, you have to. And anyone that's only looking at drive rate, they don't know what they're doing, truth be told, because you can only have so many beds and so many people that would need the beds. And we're already, what we do is very much an art and a science, especially when it comes to the memory care. No one's been able to figure out what the specific scientific formula is to figure out supply and demand. And so if there's a market where there is too many competitive beds, it will affect their pro forma and it will affect your rental rates. Therefore, it will affect your NOI because expenses are expenses. It doesn't matter if you have to reduce rates. You can only reduce so many things on the operational front. And so if you're going into the market, and even though you can try to say, well, I'll be the shiny new penny, I can tell you from experience, because I'm the shiny new penny in every market, that only helps with pre-leasing. It doesn't help long-term, because you have to think about this. People are choosing to place their mom with you, but you're also spending their inheritance. So the more that they spend with you in senior housing, the less that they get when mom or dad pass away. And I know that sounds awful, and I know probably people are thinking that would never happen. I've been doing this for 22 years, and yes, that's how people think. They will do anything to save $200 or $500 and have a lesser quality than the shiny new penny, because again, it's just saving the money.
Yeah, let me stop the slides for a second. Lori, I'd like us to talk about operations more. You know, it is highly regulated industry, and that makes it more challenging to get into. So on your day-to-day, you know, business, what are the challenges that you have been facing historically? And then let's move into effect of the pandemic. Everybody talks about that these days, right? What the effect of the pandemic had on the industry?
Yeah, you know, before February, our industry, we're healthcare, and our industry always seems to struggle with turnover and labor. I mean, let's be honest, who wants to wipe someone's hiney after they go to the bathroom? It's not a very, you know, glamorous job. And again, 80% of our workforce are folks, you know, that are on the front line. And while they're needed, they're also the lowest paid employee on the totem pole. And so with that, you know, you just get a very different type of employee than everyone on this call. So we do have some management folks that are on our team, but again, it makes up maybe 20% of our payroll per building. And so labor has always been a challenge. And then I think, you know, insurance and litigation is a very litigious industry. People like to sue. And so, you know, as an operator, you just have to make sure that you have the right documentation. We really pride ourselves on transparency. You know, we're not perfect. No operator is perfect. And you have to focus on, you know, protecting yourself. And so that's probably the two biggest things pre-COVID. Obviously, for the past 6 or 7 months, it has been all about COVID. And, you know, we're no different than any other senior living community. We've had to learn to completely learn how to operate a company in almost like it's a startup company. I feel like we had a box that was a great operating company. We've had to turn it upside down, shake it out, and rebuild it. You know, not being able to have medical people come into the building. So, you know, we had the ability to do telehealth, and that really saved us. But more importantly, there's a lot of other third-party vendors that provide services to our residents that were very limited: home health, hospice, podiatry, eyes, you know, their rounding physicians. So that became a big, like, okay, how are we still going to meet everyone's needs, but yet protect people from this pandemic, coupled with the fact now families can't even come in and visit. And I say often, you know, we're all very fortunate that we've been in our homes. And while it was hard for a couple months because we were in lockdown, and maybe some of us were having to learn to work from home in healthcare, we didn't have that option. My people still had to show up to work scared and not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing, you know, how bad this virus truly was, and fight the fear. But they also had to listen to families, you know, who were grieving because they couldn't hug their loved one. But then the biggest thing is our residents, they still haven't received a human hug since March. And I need that to soak in. They have not received any type of human touch since March. And a lot of people forget that. We just recently, the past 3 weeks, the state of Texas allowed us to do outside visits. Again, can't touch 6 feet apart. even though that's your daughter. And we just started to be able to do inside visits on an extraordinarily limited capacity. Again, can't touch, even though that's your daughter. So our residents haven't had that. And we've seen a big shift mentally. I've had more deaths over the last 3 months than I did pretty much all of last year. And I think a lot of that is due to depression and weight loss due to depression because of this pandemic. And so right now, our problem hasn't been labor. Our team has showed up. I think our culture has really shined through. We had a big, huge push to make sure we were protecting all of our team members on the front line, and also really thanking them and rewarding them along the way. But so that's been very good, and it's not necessarily the people side that's been the issue, but it definitely has been the mental health of our residents, and somewhat the mental health of our employees too, because they're just tired. And this COVID thing, it really needs to kind of settle down, because it's exhausting to the people on the front line. And it's affecting people in more ways than the media is talking about, in a negative way. I have more deaths from the fear and depression than I do of COVID. I haven't had one resident die of COVID, but I have had a lot of residents die of depression because of COVID.
Right, but it is amazing what industry has been doing and how it adapted to these conditions. There is more of a technology now available to the senior residents. They start using more of the computers and various Skype, Zoom communications through visual video calls that have previously not been used much. And staff, operators, the employees are helping them to really learn how to use it and adjust. And there has been certainly it increases the cost, right? Now there is a need of Wi-Fi in nearly every room available, right? So, in every unit.
Yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, yes, it is a rising cost of labor. But when I talk to operators, I'm hearing that it's gonna go away. Not as much, because generally before even the COVID, the wages, like you mentioned, have been going up, right? They are going up, but been escalated over the COVID for sure. That's going to be reduced, but need for technology is going to remain, right? Telemedicine plays a huge role right now, right, for this industry. It helps seniors to get services to them right in their room. But at the same time, we are looking and talking to the developers and architects and builders, how and what needs to be done for future with the new communities. So that's a big topic. There is so much to talk about. We clearly cannot cover all of it today, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. About a year ago, I had a developer. I was at ULI, and a developer, he was building a senior housing, and he said, because we put a lot of technology in our building, right? So we had a telehealth room, we had dedicated Wi-Fi lines for electronic healthcare records and electronic medication records and a bunch of stuff like that. And he said, oh, that's just a waste because you don't get any return on that through your real estate. And I said, that's very small thinking, because that's a developer thinking, not an operator thinking. Through the pandemic, we had a step ahead of everyone else, and our families have been extraordinarily thankful because we had technology already in place when we bubbled up our building. So we have Wi-Fi in every room. Every resident has an iPad. We had a telehealth room. We have a telehealth system. So we had everything. It's not ideal, and I would never want to have to force everyone to use everything again, but it was already there. And I think because of the pandemic, I can see now where the licensing agency in healthcare will start requiring developers to have the infrastructure for technology already in place from the life safety side.
Exactly. Well, operational margins have been compressing, during the pandemic. Do you think this is the temporary thing?
I do. I definitely think it's temporary. Whoever said that PPE wasn't being price gouged are liars, because they don't buy it. We bought PPE before the pandemic because we have to buy it for the flu, and purchasing it during the pandemic, I mean, it's almost sickening, the price gouging that's taken place. So I think eventually it'll settle down. I think the pandemic, anything associated with COVID, it's kind of like a wedding or having a baby. If it has that label on it, it's really expensive. But I think once it kind of settles down and we have more of the supply available to us, the pricing will come down. And we're already seeing that, where the pricing is coming down and kind of almost back into alignment. And so I think that will fix it. Hero pay, or sometimes people call us hazardous pay, that's, it's kind of gone away. I don't think, I haven't seen, nor a lot of the folks that I'm friends with in the industry, no one's keeping the small increases of wages. They have brought them back down. I've seen a little bit of price discounting to try to get census back up in the marketplace, but they typically are coming from operators that were struggling to begin with. And so, it's no secret our occupancy has gone backwards. When you can't tour people and people don't want to move in because they don't know when they can see their mom, it really, the folks that are choosing to move in are high need. But so occupancy hasn't been what it is. Plus, people still pass away in our business. So we're fighting that. So we're not moving people in at the rate that we were, and people are still kind of moving out because they're passing away. So, but I think, we're going to rebound. This is what I know. Everyone gets older every single day. And so there definitely is a need for any part of the spectrum in senior housing, or really just kind of the aging spectrum. You just have to make sure you have a great operator and you know what you want to do in that market, how you want to position yourself, and, have a pro forma that will set you up for success instead of being unrealistic. And again, a good operator can help you do that.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, the demographics definitely show that the need is growing. And some, starting from National Investment Center and some other groups have estimated the need from, anywhere from 55,000 new units a year starting from now, and up to 105,000 units a year starting from 2030. So it's going to go increasing, demand is going to go, escalate. So let's look at the trends. I think it's a time for us to look at some numbers and the trends. I'm going to pull back slides. Let me do that. So that is industry trends, Texas. We're talking about the Texas. These are the data from NIC map data that we use. And as you can see, like Lori mentioned, yes, we see that's occupancy stabilized and all occupancy have been on decline. And unfortunately, these are numbers for senior housing without skilled nursing facilities. So the numbers are down comparing to last year. Net absorption has been negative across the Texas markets, and then inventory grows, but at the same time, we see positive inventory growth. And still construction has been going on, and then the new product comes to the market. I will go through this pretty quickly, and just wanted to mention to the audience that if you'd like to see those numbers, these are numbers compiled by Colliers Houston research team and marketing team. So we have the report every half a year posted on our website, so you can find it there. But let me move to the next slide. And that's talking about average monthly rents. And So this, mid-year of 2020, we haven't seen much increases in the rents comparing to prior years. If prior years we have seen average increases in the rents somewhere, between 3.5%, so that this year is anywhere between 1 and 1.5%, just very little. So in the markets, that's what we've seen. And to some extent, it has been in decline a little bit as well. So moving on, about in this slide, you see now by markets, the trends by the markets: Austin, Dallas, major metros, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. So what I'd like to point out on those slides, we have also nursing care summary for for skilled nursing facilities by the market, by the major metros. And overall, you will see still again the decline of the occupancy then in the marketplace. A decline of the absorption, negative absorptions, as you can see practically everywhere across the border. And then inventory growth has been really slow comparing to prior years. So the next slide has it in the graphs, those data. So you can look over the years from when we started to produce our reports in the first quarter, and first quarter of 18 and 17, we have the data here. And that shows for the Texas major metros, specifically the trends. And yes, sharp declines in the second quarter of 2020 definitely is due to the COVID pandemic. So, and as we discussed, industry has a strong belief that because it's a need-based industry, those numbers are going to improve, and we are seeing those, that's already happening. Under construction, what have we seen in over the last quarter for the construction in Texas? On the left-hand side, you see the numbers combined for seniors housing in all the major metros, the number of units under the construction. But Houston amazingly took a third highest spot in the US, even beat Dallas. And last few years, Dallas had higher construction, volumes than Houston. And this year, Houston actually performed, did more of the construction. So we see it more happening here. About investment, I'd like to touch base a little bit quickly about senior housing as an investment sector. Here, the page we took from the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. So that is, this report shows all of the sectors lined up from the top to the bottom, and seniors housing, as you can see, right at the very top. So last year it was even higher. It was in the third place in investment prospects. That's this year's, for the beginning of 2020 report. It moves to the fourth place, but still it's, as you can see, ranked above many other asset types. In Texas, investment activity for the past 2 quarters have been on a decline. So there are fewer properties have been acquired, sold, but and volumes have been down. This shows combined sales activity for seniors housing and nursing care, skilled nursing facility combined, and data from Real Capital Analytics pooled. I would like to go back a little bit about average cap rate. So cap rate is a big topic, but because we practically have the data only majority from public REITs that acquired properties, this is very limited data, and it shows that cap rates have been quite low for this first 2 quarters of 2020, declined actually. And that's could be a result of fewer properties being on the market, and buyers are competing for the properties, and that definitely compresses the cap rates. So investment activity graphs, you can see that in a graph format, and Texas comparing to US markets historically from 2015 to the current till today. And Texas has been kind of up and down during those times. Prices per units were quite a big range. You can see that yellow graph on the top. So it's as high as 180 average price per unit to as low as 100,000 price per unit on average, where the US data more stable over the time. So the next graph shows the buyers composition in the Texas market, specifically to the Texas market. This, I'm trying to adjust to lower this. Let me see if I can do that better. Yeah, I'm working. Okay, sorry. Need to, my apologies, I've been trying to lower it. Okay, so the investment activity in Texas, as you can see this year, majority of buyers come from private investors. And that is about 80.8%. Well, that's not only we see in the Texas market, it's a national trend. So more of a private investors are acquiring properties at this time, comparing to prior years. So the second largest segment, we have REITs, public REITs that are still flipping some portfolios around. And we will see a lot more of the skilled nursing facilities being acquired during this time. So the skilled nursing facilities is definitely in even higher, have higher need, I guess, and that gives the buyers more confidence. There has been a lot of, I'm just gonna kind of stop those slides because the last slide is just thank you, but let me go back to this full screen. Wanted to say that as far as the acquisitions, it is recommended type of portfolio to buy right now. So, when you look which type of portfolio better to buy, to hold or to sell, seniors housing among of those that are recommended to buy. So, and it's going to recover because it's a need-based industry. And yes, we have seen it to perform even in last depression. So it's always recovers and pretty quickly, or doesn't usually declines as much as other portfolio types. So there is still strong interest, a lot of capital available for senior housing, a lot of private money available. So this industry continues to emerge as one of the prime commercial real estate sectors. And now I think we've used pretty much all of our time. Have a few minutes remaining. What are the questions, if any? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Lori, I don't know if you're looking at the comments or the chat, but it looks like there's a question about certain COVID metrics allowing lessening restrictions. Any comments on what y'all know about that?
Yes. So again, we are regulated, and so we have to take the guidance of our regulatory agency, who receives guidance from the governor. And that's true in all the states that we operate in. And so right now in Texas, again, we were just allowed to do outside visits. They have to stay 6 feet apart, but they can do outside visits. Everyone has to wear a mask. And then we were also just approved to do inside visit, as long as there's like a plexiglass kind of booth, and they call it a booth because it has to have the front and then 2 sides. And you have to get that approved by your fire marshal as well as the state. You have to sign an affidavit that you have no COVID in the building. And if you do have an active case, whether it's a resident or an employee, then the visitations inside kind of stop. And so that's what we're allowed to do right now by our regulatory agency.
Nice. Okay. And I'm kind of curious, I mean, are there any specific amenities that you guys are including in your developments today that maybe you think were crazy 10 plus years ago when you were building things?
Yeah. So when we started building, we actually built a telehealth room, and that was kind of like why are you doing that? And truthfully, we didn't really use it that much, but we do now. And so that has ended up to be a really good space. We had we'd kind of transformed our thinking to use more multifunctional spaces, and spaces that were kind of smaller versus these really large open spaces. And that too has worked really well for us from a development standpoint. I think down the road, we also do small kitchens. So we don't have the really small refrigerator. We have an apartment size refrigerator. We do, our kitchen feels very much like a kitchen, just doesn't have a stove, but it does have a sink. I do think down the road, the consumer is going to want a washer and dryer, even though that in assisted living, even though that resident doesn't do their wash, but having one in their unit is going to be something that I think the consumer is going to mandate, versus now the standard is you have one kind of on each hallway, like a dorm type of setting. So I think those are some changes. I think some other changes that are coming down is that we face, because society is causing it, is how do we accommodate the dining? So typically right now, you have in assisted living and memory care, independent living and active are very different. But in assisted living and memory care, you have one large room that everyone kind of comes in and sits down and eats. And I think, now with foodies, and there's more, food isn't just food. 20 years ago, we were serving the Depression residents that lived during the Depression, and they were just thankful to have food. Our residents now, who are post-war folks, they're used to kind of partying. They're more educated. They're cultured. They've traveled, and so their expectations from the dining isn't gonna, having kind of hospital facility type of food isn't going to be good enough. And we've been really transitioning over the past couple of years to get away from that and kind of go more towards a foodie type of setting. But we have a long way to go to get there. In kind of the IL space, they already do multi-dining type of settings. They typically offer 1 or 2 meals a day, but they have full kitchens in their units already. So that's kind of solves itself. Whereas, in assisted living and memory care, where they don't have full kitchens, we have more kitchenettes. It's trying to figure out how are we going to up our game, space wise, but also programming wise.
Okay. And so, we're pretty much out of time, but there's one other question about planning for larger units. And yeah, I'm curious about that too. Is the trend moving forward, bigger footprints, land sizes, or are you, is this going to be a more vertical type development in the future, like a lot of things are trending right now?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to land, right? And I do think that the consumer wants a bigger unit. Our units are a little bit on the bigger side in the marketplace. And what I have found is people want closets that are larger, you know, having kind of that one closet door that slides back and forth. That's not good enough for mom. Having a really small studio, not good enough for mom. And so I think having space is somewhat important, but I also think it has to be priced right, because people aren't going to pay a lot of money just to have a lot of square footage. So again, that's where the art comes in as a developer, to know your competition, and you know, kind of play with it. But I do think going up is going to end up being the answer.
Yeah, and I would like also to add, there is a more demand for urban development, more urban communities, and they go high. Yes, it's a, you know, high barrier to entry markets. They have to go up, right? The price of the land. So that we see more of the high-rise communities being developed today.
Awesome. All right, guys.
I think there was one other question. It says, can you be only an investor in the real estate aspect? And yes, I mean, obviously, you can definitely play, whether it's equity, debt, private, doesn't really matter. You can definitely play in just to the real estate. You just have to find an operating partner, and that would be, you know, where you would obviously do a management fee type of thing, and partner with the right operator. But you can definitely just own money in the real estate.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We're out of time, but Lori and Elena, thank you. That was great. I learned a lot. So thanks to everyone who joined, and yeah, best of luck to everybody on the call, and best of luck